don't. And we all have different reasons on why we do it. And in terms of coaching, there's no particular blueprint when it comes to coaching. Why do two different people with the same background, same playing careers, have total different coaching careers? What's the reason for that? And hopefully tonight we're gonna get into a little bit of it. So in terms of being a hockey coach, I think it's one of the toughest sports in order to be able to coach, because you're not just dealing with individuals, you're dealing with a team as a whole. You're dealing with an organization. You're dealing with on a midget AAA team or U18 team, you're dealing with 24, 25 people. And a tier 2 team or junior A team, you're dealing with over 30. With a Pee Wee team, you could be anywhere between 15 and 25, depending on how many people you have on staff. And we have to know that every relationship we have on those with those 15 to 35 people, our relationship differs. And in order to be a good coach or a successful coach, I feel that you have to be able to deal with each and every one of those individually, and we're going to discuss that a little bit today. And because of that, coaching hockey is it's real difficult. It's a lot easier. It's a lot harder than coaching a tennis player. So the basis of it tonight is going to be emotional intelligence, like I said. So emotion is a reaction to a stimulus, which can be either real or imagined. We can feed off of our athletes and know how they react to different stimuli. But we have to know as a coach as well that all of our athletes do the exact same for us. Whether we're up, whether we're down, they feed off of that, and it plays into their performance as well. Whether we're angry, whether we're sad, whether we're happy, as a coach, we have to realize that that can be a determining factor in how our athletes develop, how they perform, not just in games but in practice as well. And that's something that we have to be aware of. So intelligence is defined as the ability to learn, understand, or deal with new or trying situations. And emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions. So what does that mean when in terms of coaching? We have to realize that, like I said before, we're dealing with up to between 15 and 35 people. We have to realize and take into consideration everyone's, whether it's the trainer, whether it's your one of your players, whether it's a staff member, that everyone's dealing with different situations. Whether it's good or bad, we have to realize that. And as a coach, we have to realize that we have to be able to tell the difference between when people are up, when people are down, and why this is happening. This is a major factor in terms of coaching these days. It's not the same as 20 years ago where it's do as I say, um, not do as I say. Today's athletes and today's society, it's a lot different. We have to know why things are happening. We have to know our athletes in order for us to get the best out of them. So emotion in sport plays a major influence on not just ourselves, but our athletes as well. For example, it is an individual's emotion state can affect their outcome in their competition. So you can have two different players in the same game on the same team, and they have totally different emotional states, meaning that one person can have, for example, two members of the same team on the Stanley Cup Finals. Player A can take it as a challenge. Taking something as a challenge means that they're going to go out there and perform to the best of their ability because they see that as a challenge and it's something that they want to strive to compete to. Whereas someone else on that same line or on that same team sees the situation as a threat. And what does that mean? It means that they're going to go out there and play not to win, but to lose. So how do we get our players into situations in their development that we get them to play to their strengths? So, for example, player B here would be known as gripping the stick too tight. Passes aren't crisp. Shots aren't going where they need to. Or if you're a goalie, you're not making a save whatsoever. And in order for us as coaches, we have to realize when this is happening and why this is happening. And that's why I said before, this is coaching hockey is very, very difficult. One of the most difficult sports to coach. So the coach-athlete relationship. In order for us to be successful as coaches, we have to be able to relate to our players. No matter what age group they are, whether they're 8, 9, 10 years old, or 20 years old, or 25 years old. Though the situation will be different if you're coaching an IP or a U9 team, as if you're or if you're coaching a university level team, but we still have to be able to relate with them. So the relationship between the coach and his or her athletes is one of the key factors in determining the team's level of success. If you have a coach that is as great at X's and O's and knows how to beat systems and etc., but has no idea how to relate to their players, how's that going to look as well? Same, like for as much as X's and O's come down to it, at the end of the day, in my opinion, and what we're going to talk about today, being able to talk to your athletes, to relate to your athletes, and deal with things that they're dealing with, and be able to help them along the way, is a major determining factor in not just your team success, but individual success as well. If you're able to relate to your players, they're going to feel wanted. Feeling wanted means that they're going to come out every day and strive to be better, which is kind of what we ask them to do. So the technical tactical side of the sport is one of the key factors needed. But in order to be an effective coach, we have to be an athlete coach. We have to deal with them not just as hockey players, but as people. So we have to make sure that we're not just dealing with them in the hockey world, but we're dealing with them in the outside world as well. And we'll get a little bit more into this later on, and I'll give a couple examples of what I mean. But we can't just be X's and O's. We have to be able to relate to our guys and girls. So just an example of a guy that we all know, coached here for a while. Elite coaches are able to communicate what they are feeling and why. So for Guy Boucher, was a coach of the Ottawa Senators. My role as a coach extends far beyond telling them what to do. It is important for them to understand why they are doing certain things, what's in it for them, and most of all, it's about caring for our players. We have to not just be, like I said before, dictators. We have to make sure that we're teaching them the whys. It's not just the what, it's the why as well. And once our players realize that we as coaches care for them and have our best insight, or our best, that they'll realize and decide that they're going to be more willing to put the effort in. So coaches must know the technical and tactical skills as well as the particular rules of the sport, but is that all? When you look at the best NHL coaches, just we'll say NHL coaches for now, you look at a guy like John Cooper in Tampa Bay. He was a university lacrosse player, so he played Tier 2 Junior A in Canada. I think it was at Notre Dame or in Saskatchewan, and then played lacrosse at the university level. Never played professional hockey, but why is he one of the better coaches in the NHL? Is it because of his technical knowledge, or is it because he's able to relate to his athletes? I think it's, I'm not sure if it's Barry Trotz as well. All of the X's and O's are done by his assistant coaches. He's not the X's and O's, but he's the one that relates to his players. So getting to know our athletes. And this is one of the major one, a little bit more to the advanced, I would say, but something that we can do with all of our players as well. We have to know what our athletes' goals are. So from my philosophy as a coach, and I say this right off the bat, and I said it at game 1 last year, is to get better every day. And that's the only expectation I have of my players coming in, is they're there to get better every day. When they step into the rink, whether it's practice, whether it's game, whether you have 50% energy, 80% energy, 100% energy, we ask that you're there to give whatever you can so that you're developing your own career or your own skills. And that's what all I ask of my players, to make sure that they're there to get better every day. What does that require? It means that they have to come ready to, one, ready to work, and two, ready to learn. And that's a lot of the internal motivation and getting to know your players. They need to be in an atmosphere that's conducive to learning. They have to come to the rink every day knowing that they're there to get better, and two, the coaching staff is there to help them get better. Do we always know our athletes' goals as coaches? Do we sit down at the beginning of the year and ask them what their goals are? It's something I've started the last couple of years personally for myself. And I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today is, even for myself, it's a learning curve every year. It's a learning curve every week. It's a learning curve every practice and every game. I sit down on the drive home and think of ways to get better. And do we know our athletes' goals at the beginning of the year? Do we know them at the middle of the year? Do we know them towards the end of the year? Why not? Like, we, at whatever your athlete, whatever level they are playing at, they have goals at some point. Whether it's a rep B that wants to play double A, whether it's a house league that wants to play rep B, or a house league a house league player that just is there to have fun, or a double A player that's there to have fun. Do we know at the triple A level what our players want to do when they're older? Do they want to play NCAA? Do they want to play in the OHL? What's their goals? Knowing their goals will help us in how we deal with our athletes. But how do we find this out? Well, it's about having conversations with your players. And we'll talk a little bit later in terms of sitting down on one-on-ones. But we need to find these things out. We need to find out what drives our athletes. Once we do that, then we know how to coach them. If we don't know what their goals are for the future, for this year, are we doing them a disservice as a coach? So coaching goals. We have to, one, make sure that the kids are happy and having fun. At the end of the day, hockey is a sport that thousands and millions of kids play because of fun. There's 50-year-old men and women playing it because it's fun. At the end of the day, it's not minor hockey is not a job for these kids. So we have to make sure that, one, that they have interest in coming to the rink the next day. We also have to develop them as human beings. It's not just about making sure that they're good hockey players. We have to make sure that they're developing in society as well. And how do we do that? We do that by talking to them regularly. And for my personal goal is to develop them so that they can play at the next level. I went into our locker room, and my philosophy might differ from some people on this call and coaches in general. But my philosophy, and I said it day one, game one last year before the game, I said, to be honest, guys, I don't care if we win a game before Christmas. And luckily enough, I was hired in Hawkesbury to develop players. That was their goals. We wanted to develop players. To make sure that every one of them are developing. And I said that at the beginning of the year. I said, to be honest, guys, I don't care if we win a game before Christmas. And I had 3 or 4, probably even more of them, look at me like I was speaking a different language. And some of them asked, well, why is that? Well, because if we're getting better, we're going to win hockey games. Our focus shouldn't be on winning hockey games. One, we're focused on development. And two, we're focused on having fun. If we do that every day, we're focusing on development, if we're focusing on fun, then they're going to get better. Then we're going to win hockey games. But if we come in and say, we have to go 35-0 this season, then their focus is totally different. And that's where we, as coaches, have to make sure their focus and it is at an optimal level, and giving them the opportunity to come every day and develop. So part of hockey is not just the individual success or individual, it's about developing a team. How do we develop a team? So definition is a group of people with a full set of complementary skills required to complete a task, job, or project. Um, Making sure that individuals are, one, developing, and two, at the end of the day, they're buying in. When individuals with similar interests, attitudes, and tastes come together to work for a common objective, a team is formed. We have to make sure that they're coming together not just as individuals but as a team, and that's how we'll have team success. So the athlete relationship. So there's 5 core values to create a positive environment, and a positive environment for our athletes is one that will allow them to develop to their fullest, develop to their potential. So mutual respect is the first one, involving accepting individual differences, recognizing that everyone contributes to the success of the team, and being inclusive. We have to make sure that there's no cliques on our team. I've coached at the university level where we had a room um, that was divided by half of one side and half on the other side. That doesn't work either. So we have to make sure that everyone's involved. Honesty and trust. We have to make sure we're not only accountable to ourselves, but we have to keep our kids, our players, our athletes accountable as well. They have to be able to share ideas without fear of criticism and standing up for one another. When they're able to get up in a team meeting or before a game and suggest something, that's when we know that they're fully honest and trust in the team and their players. Pride in belonging to the team. If they walk away from a practice or a game and have no interest in the team, then or they're walking to the rink and they don't like the team that they're playing on or the players they're playing with, that's a big problem. If they do have pride in belonging to the team, they're willing to contribute to the team, recognize others' contributions, and represent the team positively in public. And that's a big one as well. Making sure that they're not just representing themselves, they're not just representing their family, but they're representing the team when they walk out of there as well. The one big thing with this is that you walk around the Sensplex every weekend, and all of them are walking around with their tracksuits on. Are they willing to, when they're walking around that tracksuit, they're not just representing themselves. If they feel part of the team, then they'll represent that tracksuit with pride. Commitment and loyalty, making sure that the kids are committed to their development. So making sure that they're on time, they're making sacrifices for the good of the team, not just the individual, and believe in what the team is about and what they are doing. Making sure that they're there for their own development and their teammates' development as well. So a positive attitude towards risk taking involves being willing to try new things, and this is a big one. A lot of the times, if you watch in a practice, you'll see your athletes. They're not doing the drill exactly as you want them to do. If you want them to stop, if let's say go up to the blue line, they'll always go up and stop on their strong foot. They're not going to stop on their weak foot because they want to make sure that they look like they're actually doing this properly. Well, if they're doing it properly, they're willing to take risks. If they can't cross over to the left, let's make them cross over to the left so that they can, or let's get them comfortable so that they're willing to do that, to make mistakes, to fall down, to get up again and continue on. Once they're willing to take risks and try new things, that's when they're truly going to develop. Um, I think it was last week. Brent might have been talking about doing this, is about taking risks and about doing stuff that they're not good at, making sure that we know that they're working on the things that they're taking a pass on their backhand, for example. Let's take a pass on their backhand. They won't want to do it because they don't want to look foolish. But once they work on it, and if they're willing to work on it and they know that they have a positive attitude between them and their teammates, they're willing to take that pass on the backhand, because if it does bounce off, you know what? So what? We'll get it the next time. So the athlete relationship. What do we want to accomplish? As a team, we want to create a team culture. That's the big one. Creating a team culture. And with those 5 core values, if they're willing to do those 5 things towards their teammates, towards their team, that's how we build a team culture. Being open to suggestion, making sure that every one of them has a voice in the room, making sure that it's not the same people always talking or suggesting things, that each and every one of them are able to contribute to the team and willing to do that. If we get our players to buy in, we make sure that everyone is on the same page and no outsiders looking in. Every year you coach, you'll have one or two. Um, it's just the way it is. The way you'll have one or two kids that are always the ones that are the shy ones, or the ones that aren't willing to voice their opinion. Once we get all of them, even for getting them out of a little bit of their comfort zone, if someone is shy and having even a little bit to say, that's when they all get the buy-in. Um, we have to make sure that they're all willing to do it and they're all part of this on the same page, and they're not someone on the outside looking in. So we have to make sure that every individual contributes equally and performs his or her best level to meet the team targets and achieve the organization's goals. So what makes up a hockey team? Is everyone on a hockey team equal in terms of skill wise? No, they won't all be equal, but should they all be equal? Yes. Everyone on that team should have a say. Everyone should play the power play at the minor hockey level. Everyone should play the PK at the minor level. D zone faceoffs. Why is it that we are willing to promote or develop our elite athletes, and sometimes not always our weaker athletes? Everyone's equal on that team, and once we make sure, or we instill in our athletes, that everyone on the team is equal, that's when we'll get buy-in from all 20 or 15. So who creates expectations on the team? This past season, what I did with our midget AAA or U18 team, I had them create their own goals. They create their own goals. Everyone sent in 3 or 4 goals for their season in terms of the team, and then we voted on them, and then was team goals. Why did we do that? Well, it creates buy-in. If it's me that's telling, or the coaching staff telling them that these are our goals, not everyone's going to have the same goals. They're not going to feel as if they're their goals. It's going to be the coach's goals. So we have to make sure that everyone creates expectations. Does everyone have the same expectations? No. Every one of them will have different goals, everyone for themselves individually. But once we get them to buy in and make sure that they feel as though they're part of the process, that's when we're going to get the kids to buy in. So again, with Guy Boucher, and this is a big one for me. For me, I'm not coaching systems, I'm coaching individuals. Managing people comes first on my list before managing either the group or systems. If I have 24 people on my team, I need 24 ways to coach. And that's the way I approach the game. And that's the way we have to approach our athletes these days. Every one of them is going to be different. We can't, one style of coaching or one way we're going to coach player A is not going to be the same thing with player B or player C. Each and every one of them is going to have different expectations, different background, different trainings coming up. We have to make sure that we know our athletes and are willing to coach them differently. We had kids this year that, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but we had kids this year that wanted to meet every week. I had one player that wanted to meet every week, every 10 days, just to reinforce how we was playing. I had some players this year that if I didn't be with them at all, they would have been happy with that as well. But every player and every athlete that you have is different. We have to make sure that we're coaching them differently. And excuse my language, there's going to be kids that we have to kick in the ass, and there's going to be some kids that we have to coddle, and we have to know each one of them and what gets them, what drives them. So another one is John Cooper. I just saw this the other day. You've got to let these players breathe and let them play to their strengths. Let them play to their confidence. We have to make sure, like I said, we have to make sure that they're in an environment where they feel comfortable to play to their strengths. to go out there and develop on their terms and work towards their development so that we're not controlling their development. At the end of the day, they're controlling their development. So dealing with athletes on an individual basis is an essential part of coaching. Like I said, each athlete is different. Each athlete is going to have different ways they need to be coached, want to be coached, different philosophies. And it could be as much as at the higher levels, they can have different where parent influence. Some of them have parental influence that are part of their coaching staff. That at the end of every game, they're the ones that are going over the game review. So they need feedback. Some of them are going to have parents that drop them off, have nothing to do with or have no say in the ride home on how their game was. We have to make sure we know that as well. Some of them will have agents or representatives that that will have influence on them as well, and that's stuff that we have to know. So, how do we build relationship with our athletes? Beginning of the year, we have to make sure that we meet with our athletes to know exactly what to deal with the year coming up. I like to at the beginning of the year, especially. I like to meet with them 2 or 3 times if they're new, just so that we know what kind of personality they are. We have to make sure, are they willing to open up. And I'll use an example. I had a player this year that after about a month and a half or 2 months that we've had a couple of good conversations with, and then all of a sudden for a couple of days, their performance went down, their motivation went down, and we brought the player in and asked what was going on, and wasn't really willing to open up. Finally, we realized that there was a sickness in the family, and that was kind of the reason why their play was in decline. And we have to know, and I'm not saying this for um, we have to know. For me as a coach, my philosophy is I have to know what's going on, whether it's full detail, whether it's partial. We have to know, like, especially at the midget AAA level, we have to know what's going on. Are our players fail the test? Did they break up with their girlfriend? And for the younger kids, is mom or dad sick? Is grandma or grandpa sick? And it's not to pry into their relationship, but it's to get the best out of them and making sure that we're dealing with them properly. Um, Sometimes the hockey is used as an outlet. We have to make sure that we can allow them a safe zone where they can open up to us. So if not, how come? Why are they not willing to? Is it because they don't feel valued as a teammate or as a player? What's our assistant coach's role in this as well? And I've seen um, some teams that I think it was I can't remember, maybe the University of Ottawa women's team scheduled their assistant coaches to go out there and talk to their players every day on the ice. And it's an informal, and the players didn't know, and it was an informal training or contact where they just had to go up and, hey, how you doing? How are things going? Um, Making sure that we know how things are going on. Just even as assistant coach, it doesn't have to be formal. We can have our assistants go up and practice, stand in line, and say, "Hey, how are things going? Is everything good? Or you played really well yesterday? Or how did things happen?" Just little things like that will get our players to open up to us and feel more comfortable. I'll use another example, and it could be something as simple as I was coaching at the university level, Concordia, a couple of years ago, and another example is we had a player that on a Friday night received a DUI, and that's something that at the U11 or U13 level you're not going to have to deal with, I hope. But at the university level, that's stuff that you have to deal with. So he did not tell anyone that what had happened, and he came out the next day, and it was like he had seen a ghost and played like it. And then the week after was the same thing, and we finally were able to meet with him, and he opened up, and he had received a DUI and was really in shock. So just little things like that, and knowing your athletes will get the best out of them. So when we develop our athletes, we have to make sure we develop what their role is on the team. They have to know what their role is. If they know what their role is, they're going to be willing to work at it. Does everyone have the same role? Nope. Everyone on the team is going to have different roles. Could they be similar? Yes, but they're going to have their own different roles. And how do we get players to accept their roles? And that's a challenging one. And them being willing to open up and be vulnerable with their coaches is how we're going to get them to accept their roles. So individual player meetings. For me personally, I like to meet with them every 3 to 4 weeks. My goal is, if we can, is formally every 3 to 4 weeks, and then within those 3 to 4 weeks, informally, a text message after a game, or coming before the rink and talking to them for a minute or two, and hey, you're playing really well. Hey, you've done this. Will help within their development. But every 3 to 4 weeks, for me personally, that's when I like to meet with our players. We sit down for 10 minutes, discuss the last 4 weeks, 4 weeks, and where are we going for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Do they always work those 10 minutes? No. Sometimes you need more. Sometimes you need less, depending on the player. But that's where the getting to know the players comes into play. Are there other ways that we can connect with our athletes? Today's athlete is real technological, and growing up, and it'll change even more coming forward. But we have to make sure that we have to find a way to deal with each and every one of them, and get each and every one of them, being able to connect with them. And sometimes it's a quick text message. Sometimes it's for the older players. Sometimes it's through the parents. Hey, little Johnny's playing real well lately. His skating strides improved, and they can pass it on. We have to make sure that we find the ways to get to those athletes and make sure that they feel wanted. So, like I said, every individual must feel motivated to perform their best. And once they're motivated to come to the rink every day and perform to their best, that's when we're going to get the best out of them and get the best out of our team. And like I mentioned before, never impose things on anyone. Especially with the kids coming up these days, if we tell them what to do instead of telling them why we're doing things, that's when they shut down. If we tell our athlete now, this is how things have to be done, the more than likely they're not going to be willing to do what you ask. But if we sit down with them and say, look, this is what we need done from you, and this is why, they're more willing and have a voice in it. They're more willing to perform to their best and be motivated towards that. And the big one here is they must trust their coaches. Once our players realize that we as coaches have their best interest at heart, then they're gonna push to make sure that they're getting better every day, like we ask of them. If they realize that, you know what, coaches, what he's saying or what she's saying is at the best for my development. Once they realize that, and if they buy into it, then they're going to be motivated. So how do we get players to buy in? We do this through leadership. In order for players to follow the buy-in to team culture, they need to know what a coach is preaching is actually what he believes. If we say one thing and then do something different, that's when we're going to get our players to not buy in. If we tell them that every player is equal and then we only have one power play unit and one PK unit, then the odds of them believing in what you're saying in terms of everyone's there and everyone's equal and getting better, the odds of them putting the effort in for the players that aren't on those power play units or PK units, for their philosophy anyway, is not going to be there. You must practice what you preach. Like I said, we can't do one thing, say one thing, and do something totally different. Once we do that, our players will see right through us, whether it's the U13 level, the U11 level. If they think that we're not truthful, or we're not being honest with them, that's when they're going to be, you know what, I'm not going to buy in so much, and my motivation level is not going to be there. So good leaders have emotional intelligence. So motivation, like I said before, as a coach, internal versus external. What drives us as coaches? We come back to the first slide. Why do we coach? Is it for us? Internally, is because we love to do it. We want to see our athletes get better. Externally, you know what? I got a paycheck at the end of every 2 weeks. And once we think that way, that's when our players will see that. Is it what drives us? Or is it winning? Is it player development? Is it moving our players on? Is it teaching the game? For me, like I said before, and when I said it to our players about not winning a game before Christmas, they looked at me strange, but that was actually true. My motivation is to get the best out of my players and to develop them. If we do that, and if we make sure that they develop and they get to achieve their goals, then for me as a coach, we've done our job. Our coaching staff, we've done our job. If we go 42-0 and none of our players, for me anyway, play at the junior A level next year, or the OHL level, or junior B level, then have we done a good job? For me, personally, I don't think so. And that's my internal motivation. My internal motivation is to make sure that they develop as players. And our athletes will buy into that as well, and catch on to that as well. Coaches with proper motivation are able to get the best out of their athletes. If they realize you're in it for the right reason, they'll make sure that they're working hard. So self-awareness. Being able to understand why things are, or why you're angry. Self-awareness is making sure that we realize that, you know what, I'm angry today, and it could be because of something that happens not within the rink, but something within our job, within our family. And why are we angry, and why are we taking it out on our athletes? Being self-aware is the ability to understand your own moods and your own mood and emotion, and both in terms of their effect on you and their effect on your athletes. And we've all had this as coaches. You have a practice at 5:30, you get an email from work at 4:30, and it's something that doesn't agree with you, and now all of a sudden you're angry going into practice. The first 5 minutes of practice, you're angry in practice, and your players feed off of that, and they realize, you know what, coach is angry, but they have no idea why you're angry. Being able to understand why your mood is the way it is, and being able to adjust it, will help you with your athletes. So highly self-aware coaches are confident, have a realistic view of their abilities, and aren't afraid to admit their mistakes. And that's a big one in terms of opening up with your athletes, being able to admit your mistakes. I'm not saying it daily, but I'm saying if there is something, being able to be open with your athletes and say, you know what, yeah, you were right there, I was wrong. That's when they'll truly be motivated to play for you. So empathy is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people. Understanding why Johnny is not performing up to their potential today. Why is he angry? Why is he sad? Why is she sad? Like I said before, if something as little as failing an exam for a grade 12 player coming into practice, they're not going to be as motivated. If they're angry and they're worried about their marks, knowing this beforehand will help you as a coach deal with them better. Coaches who have the ability to empathize are able to build strong relationships. If you bring your players in, you know what? Yeah, I failed that exam too when I was in grade 12. Something as little as that, being able to empathize with them, will make sure that they're in the right frame of mind when they're coming to practice with games. So it's important for coaches to show emotional concern for their athletes. Not, like I said before, it's not just the technical and tactical side, but we have to be able to realize and deal with their emotional states and why things are happening. And the big one here is that athletes know when their coach truly cares for them. And once they realize that you truly care for them, that's when they're going to get when you're going to get the buy-in. If they realize that you care and what you're saying is true, that's when you're going to get the best out of your athletes. So social skills, and I'll be honest. For me, if I were to tell you 25 years ago that I would have been doing this or a presentation like this, I was the shy kid in school. I was always that one. I was the one that was in the background, and not willing to speak up. And that's something that I work with. I work on every day, and making sure that we're able to deal with it and be able to talk with our players. We have to be able to talk with them. We have to be able to talk with our assistants and our trainers and our parents, depending on the age groups. But coaches who are socially skilled are able to manage relationships because they're able to empathize, and they're able to talk to their players, to their athletes. Like I said, I work on this every day. I work on this in terms of my coaching ability through my social skills daily. And it's something that I work on, and I have to work on, or else coaching for me is not gonna work. So successful coaches are able to develop positive, effective relationships. And once we're able to do that, that's when we get buy-in. So simply put, people want to feel wanted. They want to be picked up. Pick your athletes up. Don't bring them down. When we're down on the bench, let's bring them down. Let's bring them up. Let's make sure. And the one thing about this game that we all coach and we all love, is that it's a very emotional game. And I'm not saying that I've never that I'm always the positive one, but coming the last 4, 5, 6 years, we have to realize that it's a very emotional sport, and it's tough to, if you're down one early, to not get hard on your players and make sure that you know what, we're okay here, and making sure that once they know that you're okay, then their emotional state will be brought up as well. If they feel that you're down, that's when they're going to be like, you know what, I don't think we have it today. I think we're going to just shut down. And they, like I said before, they feed off of your emotion. We have to keep that in check. So self-regulation. Is my anger justified? And does the player know why I'm angry? Does he or she know why I'm happy? Something as little as going into the room and, hey, Peter, you played the best game I've ever seen you play today. And in their head, you know what, it was just an average game for them. But why did you play well? And explaining to them why they played well, that's when self-regulation will help. Is my anger justified? Am I angry because I got an email 10 minutes before practice that made me mad? Is it because, you know what, the players aren't working today? And if they're not working today in practice, how do we change that? How do we change them from being angry and yelling at them or putting them down to getting them up? Something as simple as in a practice, you know what, we've played 3 of the last 4 days, or we played 3 days. This is our third or fourth ice session in 4 days. Knowing this and why they're not working hard in practice, why is my anger? Is it justified on that? Well, you know what, maybe not, because they're tired, because they have no energy left. You look at kids in high school, they have a week long exam period. Are they just totally gassed after exam period? Why are we taking it out and being angry with our players if we know that they've just spent 5 days studying for exams? We know that going into practice, and if so, how do we change our practice towards that? So just little things like that. Self-regulation, being able to deal with your own emotions and getting yourself back on track and making sure you know why things are happening. And the biggest one is communication. That's the biggest one in terms of being a leader. Creating an open dialogue with your athletes, with your staff, with everyone. And once you do that, and creating an open dialogue where it's give and take, where the players are free to ask questions, that's when That's when you're going to get the most of your team, and that's when you're going to build a team. So what is our goal as coaches? We have to explain that to them early. Is it to win games? Is it to win the tournament? Or is it to play to the best of our ability? If we do that, if we play to the best of our ability and we lose a game 2-1, is that justified? If we play poorly and our goalie makes 55 saves and we win 2-1 because we had two shots and both of them went in, is that the best of our ability? Is our motivation, is our goal to get the kids to the next level? And the biggest one is for us as coaches, we have to make sure we have to keep kids playing hockey, and that's our goal at the end of the day. So just some things that will affect the way we're seen as coaches. Professionalism, so appearance, demeanor, punctuality. We can't tell our players that they have to be there an hour and 15 minutes before a game or practice, and then show up 5 minutes before practice. Then that's when they don't buy in. That's, you know what, the coach doesn't practice what he preaches. If you're there with the players an hour and 10, an hour and 15 minutes before, well, you know what, if he's doing it, then, or she's doing it, then we're going to do it as well. Attentiveness, being able to be aware of what's going on with your players, with your team, within your room. Preparation, are you prepared? Your players will know if you're prepared or not. I'll guarantee that. If you just walk in, show up 5 minutes before practice and drop the puck and here we go, and we don't know where they're going, they're gonna be aware of that. We ask all of our players to be coachable. What does it mean to be coachable? Coachable means that we're open to learn at all times. Do we learn from our coaching mistakes? Do we learn from our positive coaching moments? So the one thing for us as coaches, we have to make sure that we're coachable as well. It's not one thing that you do one week could be something that might not work the week after that. We have the game of hockey is always changing, and as coaches, we have to make sure that we're changing with it. How do we create coachability in ourselves? Are we willing to learn? And the one good thing about these webinars, and I've seen, because I'm the one who has to enter the names after, is a lot of the same names each week, meaning that you guys are coachable. Like, you're the ones that want to get better. Do we want to get better as coaches, or is it just the players? Well, this is how I coach for the last 15 years. Does that make us the best coach, or should we be coachable and learn day to day, just like our players should be doing what we ask of our players? And this is one of the big things that I learned in my HP1. I did my HP1 in 2010 in Quebec, and Jean-Francois Mouton was our group leader. And the one thing that, out of 8 days of in-class work, where 2 or 3 of the people were professional hockey coaches, and 2 or 3 of the guys in my group are now coaching major junior hockey. And the one big thing that I got out of this is, just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for them. And that really stuck with me. We hear a lot as coaches, why don't you understand? It's easy. It's an easy drill, get it right. Or it was an easy pass. Why didn't you hit the tape? Or why weren't you able to get that pass in your backhand or your forehand? Just because you think it's easy doesn't mean that it's easy for our players. Do we understand that? Some players are visual learners, right? So, sorry, I'll go there. Because it's easy for us, does that mean it's easy for all of our players? It could be easy for one of our players, but is it easy for our next player? Something that is easy for you cannot be easy for everyone. Do we understand that? And that's part of the open dialogue. I've had players that come up to me, Coach, I don't understand when you draw on the board. Okay, well, how do we fix that? And how do we fix that? Do we accommodate to our players, and that's part of the openness. If they're willing to say, Coach, you know what, I don't understand when you draw or when you drew that drill. Can you explain it again? If they're willing to do that, that means that they're taking they're motivated in their development. You know what, I don't understand that 2-on-1 drill. Can you draw it again for me? I want to get it right. Okay, well, here you go. And that's when they're going to be motivated to learn, when they're willing to make that sacrifice and say, you know what, I don't understand. But like I said, is it easy for everyone? Just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy with everyone. Couple more slides here. At the end of the season, when a coach looks back at the end of the season, they should focus on, one, did the athletes have fun? Were they willing to come every day, willing to work? Were they happy? Did they leave with a smile on their face? What goals are theirs? What goals of the team were attained? And did they attain the skills necessary to move on to the next level? If we can come back and say at the end of the year that all 4 of those things were hit, then you know what? For me personally, I've had a good year. If I know that my athletes are ready and having fun and willing to come to the rink next day, and they had fun at practice, they've learned something, they've attained their goals, and you know what? They're going to play at the level they want. Then we know we've done a good job. Just leave you on this. Successful coaches are motivated to coach for the sake of coaching. They're dedicated, hardworking, and love what they are doing. And if you're, and like I said before, it's a lot of the same names. So a lot of the people on this call are these coaches. And if you're doing that, our athletes will feel that and get them to buy in, and their development will be in their hands. Just something to leave you on. You could say it a lot better than I can. Brian, questions?
Thanks, Jeff. That was insightful. A lot of real good information in there. Yeah, we got a couple of good questions that came in that we snagged off the chat. First one, dealing with disrespect of players. The coach that asked the question wondered if you had any creative ideas to deal with players that are disrespectful, either to other players, to coaches. Dealing with that player who kind of knows they can't be released. They know they're going to be on the team because they're good enough. How do we deal with that type of player, build relationships with them, sort of get on the inside?
It's about having an open dialogue with them and making sure that when you bring them in, it's not just like, this is how it's going to go. It's making sure that they realize that, one, if you are disrespectful, and that's fine, but you're taking away from other people's success as well. You're not just taking away from your success, you're taking away from your buddy who's playing with you, and 2, you're taking away from your team as a whole. And at the higher levels, it's a little bit easier, just because let's say Bantam AAA or above, they realize that, you know what, they want to get to the next level. So when you're looking, and when scouts are asking, they're going to ask. I say this with my players a lot, is, you know what, when the scouts come to us, they're not asking about how you are as a hockey player. They can see you play hockey. They know how good you are. But once they understand that, the scouts are asking the question of, okay, is he a good teammate? And that's when we get from the higher end level. That's when they're like, oh, that's where the light turns on, and they're, well, if I'm not a good teammate, I might not get to where I want to go. And some it helps, and some, like, you're gonna have kids like that always, but making sure that it's an open dialogue and bringing them in. And sometimes it's just simple as, you know what, maybe the kid is buying in, but the parents aren't. And getting that dialogue and making sure that they're open to share on what's going on with them, that's when we get buy-in.
Great. One of the coaches asked, we all know players have to feel equal. It's our job to ensure that players have some feeling of equality on the team. If you praise defensive achievements the same way and to the same level that you praise offensive achievements, is it then not a positive to have designated power play and penalty kill?
Honestly, it all depends on what level. Some players are going to be better on the PK than they would be on the power play. But then again, my philosophy is that we're not professional hockey, and every player needs the opportunity to be that power play guy. And I think we cut kids down too early in their careers and say, you know what, he's not going to be a power play guy. He's going to be a PK guy. And I'm, to be totally honest, I'm a defensive minded hockey coach. My philosophy is to teach them the side of the game without the puck. Um, but having that, you know what, we don't want to make sure we want to make sure that they're getting that opportunity either way. Um, there'll be a time at the junior level or higher where, you know what, they're not going to be a power play person anymore, or they're not going to be a PK player. That's just the way it is. But until they get to that level, my personal philosophy is that they all deserve the opportunity. And for me, the last couple of years, it's been um, kind of an eye opener for some of the parents. I don't have power play units. I don't have PK units. We roll the next line up until last 7-8 games of the year, and I've had parents come to me, well, why don't we have power play units? And that was one of the things in terms of open communication I had with my players this year, is that the captains came to me after about a month and a half, 2 months. Well, coach, we might win a couple more hockey games if we have power play units. Okay, but what happens next year when those power play players are gone? And the PK players, I've never seen the power play. What's gone with their development? We have to make sure that they're all getting an opportunity, and that's my philosophy anyway. That's the way I see the game.
Excellent. Questions are starting to roll here, so we're going to be busy for a little bit.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas to share on how to motivate players in a losing record season?
It's little things, little goals that we want to get to. We've all had years where we're a team that struggles. So it's creating little goals for themselves, creating little goals for the team. Whether it's, if you're losing, let's say you start the beginning of the year, you're losing 4-0. Okay, well, we want to lose 3-0 in the next 3 games, or we want to lose 2-0, or we want to lose 1-0. It's creating little achievements to make sure that they're on the right track and they're still working towards their development. If we just say, you know what, yeah, we're just going to lose again today, and we have no goal that we're striving towards, then that's when they're going to shut her down, as what the coaches say. But yeah, it's defining little goals and making sure that they're working on their development. If we let up 35 shots a game, it's getting it down to 28 shots a game. Let's get it to 28 or 30, and then to 28, and then 25. And if we do that, they'll realize that they're developing as hockey players.
Great answer. Question came in on dealing with cliques.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas on how to deal with, at the tier 1 AA level, where you get you quite often get a large portion of a roster that carries over from year to year to year. Any ideas on how to deal with a core group or a clique of players that start to form and everyone becomes on the outside? How do you deal with breaking that clique and kind of, spreading them apart, getting them apart, and getting rid of that clique mentality?
Lots and lots of team building. Lots of team building away from the rink. The one thing is, because they're year after year, they're with the same kids, and those outsiders aren't willing to break in. They're not willing to stand up, and making sure that every kid, for me personally, we do a lot of team building, whether it's little things. It doesn't have to be a major thing, but getting them away from the rink, especially if you're at the Bantam AA level, or let's say above, taking them bowling, taking to things to where they're not hockey players, they're equals. Just little things like that. Having your kids that are outside speak up a little bit more helps as well. And creating even an opportunity where someone from outside that group is not a captain, or someone from outside that group is a captain. Having that little extra voice, and that's one thing I've done the last couple of years, is I've made one of my minor midget players a captain, just to give that group a voice as well. Helps out a little bit.
Great. what suggestions do you have for a coach that has a captain that is no longer buying in and supporting the coaching staff's message?
What age group?
They weren't specific. Let me roll back here. So the question came in from Ed Morrow. So Ed, if you'd like to
Ed,
unmute your mic and chime in, feel free to do so.
Mr. Morrow.
Maybe not.
If you do have questions that aren't answered, they can always email me as well, and I can respond.
Yeah. So any general ideas? So let's say at the Bantam, U18, AAA levels. Just as an idea.
Easiest solution, remove the captaincy. and as much as you, and I think for me personally, I have a lot more to say with my captains. So if we meet every 3-4 weeks with our players, I'll meet every 2 or 3 practices with our captains, just to have them come in and their. And my philosophy is that it's their room at the midget AAA level, at the junior level, it's their room, within reason, that they have to be the ones that are the leaders. And once they realize that they're the leaders, then we'll get buy-in. If they don't, then we have an issue, and then we drastic measure is take away the captaincy. Find someone who's willing to work, like or do something as drastic as giving a player that is buying in more of a role. So if you have a player on your team that is not a captain but is buying into what you're asking and working hard, let's make them a captain as well. Let's show to the rest of the kids that, you know what, this is what we wanted from our captains. We want hard workers. But opening that dialogue with all of our players, and especially our captains, and bringing them in even more, that's when we're going to get the buy-in from them. And I know Ed a little personally. He coached, it was the PWHL, I think, last year, Provincial Women's Hockey League, so he would have been a little bit older. At that level, finding someone who, doing something drastic, where we're adding someone to the captaincy, might help out.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to cross into a couple of questions that start getting into the parent realm. So the first one that came in, what age do we start dealing with players only and not parents anymore? Where do you think that line is?
Yeah, for me, midget. For me, midget is kind of the age, 15 years old is where, that's when I'm trying to, where we're dealing with young adults. I think bantam and below, bantam. I think major bantam, you want to try a little bit more to get to the players, because at 14 years old they're a little bit more mature. But even earlier than that, I don't think they're mature enough yet to deal. We want to deal as much as we can with our athletes and make sure that we're developing them. Especially at the major bantam. I think major bantam is that's when they're starting to become young adults. They're moving into midget hockey next year. Let's deal with them a little bit more as adults, but still at the same time use the parents as a kind of a feeder as well. And I've had parents this year, the last 2 years, at 15 years old, that wanted to be the first contact. And at 15 years old, for me, you're playing midget hockey. That's when now we're gonna try to treat you as an adult. And I explained that to them at the beginning of the year with the parents meeting too. Is we're gonna deal with them. We'll let them know when if practice has changed, to give them a little bit more responsibility. And I think for me at the midget level is kind of that's when the start for that.
Okay, great. How do you keep players focused on team goals, individual goals, season plans, etc., when mom and dad are having that contradictory effect? on the car ride to and from the arena or outside the glass?
Making sure that the kids have a voice, and that comes down to the one-on-one conversations you have with your athletes, is making sure that they have a voice in their development. And you'll always have the parents that are going to be the ones that are we'll say contradictory to what you're trying to get, but making sure that they feel that they have a voice within the team and they have a voice within the team's development is when we're going to get them to buy in. And I had 2 kids this year that were kind of in that realm where it's before 10 games before playoffs. I brought them the 2 kids in, and I said to both of them, is kind of, we're going to go as far as you guys want this team to go. And we put the emphasis on them and them as leaders on the team, though neither of them were one of them was a captain and then one wasn't, but was bringing them in and saying, this is your team, like we're gonna go as far as you want to go. And that got them a little bit, it was a little bit more motivating. It was them, now it's I'm in charge of our development, so let's go out there and do it. And having that open relationship with them kind of helps as well.
Great. Last one. At the midget level, so the question is specifically at the midget rep level.
Mm-hmm.
So at that age level, how do you deal with or motivate that player that is clearly your most skilled guy or gal, but they cut corners, their teammates see it and they resent it. They don't always give their best effort. Any suggestions on how to reach that kind of player?
Again, it's bringing them in and explaining to them it's not just about them, that it's about the team. And that's a tough age group at the midget rep. It's kind of that's their outlet where they want to just go have some fun, play with their friends. But making sure that you're open dialogue with them and saying, you know what, like, you doing this is hurting your friend. Like, they're here to they want to get better by you doing this, and you're the leader on this team, and we're not leading by example. That's when the rest of them will they follow you, and making sure that they realize that they're a leader on the team, and that should help a little bit. But having an open dialogue, making sure that we're that you're talking to them constantly. And knowing what their effect has on the rest of the team.
Gotcha. Great. Well, that does it for the questions, Jeff. Thank you very much for the very insightful and informative presentation. I know coaches took a lot away. The feedback, just the volume of questions alone tells me that it inspired some thought and tweaked some ideas in coaches. There was a lot of well done, great jobs, a lot of positive feedback. Again, to the coaches who attended and those that are still online, thank you for being back with us. As Jeff said, we keep seeing a lot of the same names over and over. It's very promising. We're enjoying running these webinars. We hope you're enjoying attending them. We currently have 3 more on the docket, but we are working hard on scheduling some more. Next week, we have Dave Stathos online, and he's going to be giving a really interesting talk on how to deal and work with your goaltenders when you don't have a goalie coach. You yourself don't know anything about the position, so he's going to have some really great ideas. Dave Leger is going to join us the week after that. And following that, we have Larry Rush doing a presentation on coach as teacher, talking about some methodologies and whatnot. So again, thank you, everybody. Keep your eyes open on our social media feeds. Jeff will be firing out the link for the next registration and the next upcoming webinar. And in the coming week, everybody stay safe and enjoy the great weather.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.